So when it comes on to a child's language development, it's not just centered around the ABCs that you normally teach the child or the hi, good afternoon, good morning, and all of that. The overall language development of a child is centered around three main aspects. And we're going to look on those three main aspects for today because we're looking at language development. So my name is Chris. I'm the founder of Edunomics Limited. We're an online-based training platform. So if you're interested in early childhood education or early childhood development, practical nursing or geriatric nursing, you can always give us a try and reach out to us to join our platform and to start training with us. All right, so let's get now into the whole aspect of how language development works. Now, everyone knows that they have different developmental domains as it relates to a child. Now, one of those developmental domains is centered around language. Language is what we're doing right here. I'm speaking, you're listening, and when I speak, I presume you're understanding, hopefully, but there's a bit of communication. We looked at communication the other day, but we're looking at language development. No. So let's get into that aspect. Now, an early childhood practitioner, your role when it comes on to language development is key, important. Why? You help to support the language and cognitive development of that particular child. Follow me now. Following me. Now, let's look at how we go about doing that. Now, the three things that I mentioned earlier, the first one we're going to look on is asking better questions. So how do we facilitate the language and cognitive development of the child? Asking better questions. I'll give you a scenario. I have seen where persons will ask a question. All right? They take up a bottle. This is a bottle. Take up the bottle and say, hey, is this a bottle? Yes. That's not a good way to ask a question, especially if you're teaching. When it comes on to early childhood students, you want to have something they call open-ended questions. Why open-ended questions? It's because it gives the child the opportunity to think, to speak, to express themselves, and to have those neurons firing in the head to say, hey, this is a relationship between this and so on. Now, open-ended questions, a good example is this. Let's say you have a ball here. What do you think I can do with the ball, Johnny? Why is it always Johnny? But anyways, what do you think I can do with the ball? That's an open-ended question because what that does is gives the child the opportunity to say, hey, what can I actually do with that particular ball? And then Johnny will say, oh, we can bounce it. We can throw it. And in some cases, if you have a nonverbal child, they will take the ball and this is where the asking better questions comes to the play now. So if you have a nonverbal child and you decide, okay, what can we do with the ball, Johnny? Johnny, give Johnny the opportunity to take the ball and manipulate the ball because that open-ended question gives the child the opportunity now to go ahead and think. Let's look at point number 2, the use of story, song, and play as it relates to developing the overall cognitive and language aspect of the child. Now let's look at play. Now play is an interaction between children. Now this interaction, what it does, it allows the child to express his or herself, 1. 2, it also allows the child now to ascertain if I'm exerting too much or am I exerting too little, because they're able now through play to gauge, okay, this may be too much for my friend or this may be too much for myself. And then from there now, they're able to say, hey, all right, sharing is good. When they play, they communicate. And this is where the ability for them to talk, the availability for them to make up stories, make up songs comes into play. And what that does, because this is how the brain operates. For a child to create a song and a story, there are sections of the brain that are required to fire. Now, those sections of the brains allows them to take in the information that they would have experienced in the world, blend it up, and give you an output. So, good example, there's a young man, I won't call his name, he was doing his version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars. Where did he get that song from? Yeah. I've heard young children telling the story of a particular book in their version because that's how they understand. So the use of stories, songs, and play allows a child to speak, sing, and when they play, they're able to now connect to that aspect for their imagination, their friendships get developed, and their ability to interact with other persons get developed. And in turn, all that comes together to build their language, build how they speak to others, build how they think about others, and also how they go about doing their particular reasoning in situations. Now, the last part as it relates to building the language aspect for a child is listen, repeat, expand. Now, when we listen, repeat, and expand, we will, we have a thing where, as adults, I'm guilty of it. A child will be telling you a story, and it takes a while for them to get that story built up. And a lot of Jamaicans, they will say that, okay, a child starts to tell you a story. Come on, man. Whatever. And they somewhat shun the child. That's not actually bad. That is not bad. That is very bad. Because here's what's happening now, right? They're getting the knack of how to structure their communication with persons that are not at their level. Because when they're at their level, you know, when a 2-year-old and a 2-year-old interacting, when a 3-year-old and a 3-year-old interacting, it's good. But they're trying to get up to a level that you are at. So they're trying that communication aspect. Now, being able to listen, repeat, and expand, it means that when you hear the child make a statement, let's use a good example for that statement. Child sees a bird flying across. Child says, "Mommy, bird." Your response in most Jamaicans, "Oh, here's a bird." Most Jamaicans. But what if your response is, "Yes, it's a bird. It's in the sky." Now, you see what I did there? I acknowledge what the child said because I listened and I repeated, "Yeah, it's a bird." But what I expanded with is that I added context. The bird is in the sky. Because what happens, and this is where a lot of children are somewhat falling short of when it comes on to their language aspect. They're limited to the level of communication that they get on a daily basis. Meaning, if you don't speak to the child and speak to the child very often, they will not know what to say when the time comes. Meaning, the more you expose them to the language, the more they grow. So me saying to the child, "Yes, that's a bird. It's in the sky," adds to their mental space that all birds are in the sky. But it also begs a question. The child may go back and say, "Hold on, but I saw a bird walking on the ground." So that is where now they will ask another question, which you will listen, repeat, and expand. Because this is how language works. Language works like building blocks. So they have one building block. You have to be the one to add to that particular building block for them. And how you do that is by speaking with the child. You listen, repeat, expand. I'll add this in closing. A lot of children nowadays are having a lot of developmental delays, especially as it relates to their language and how they speak. There's a reason for that. We don't speak to the children. A lot of adults don't speak to children. meaning that we don't take the time out of our extremely busy day to have a proper conversation. Gone are the days where a parent will come home and talk to the child. Gone are the days where a parent will come on a Sunday and have a newspaper and give the child the little mini newspaper section or even the cartoon section for them and spend that time with the child. Gone are those days. And those actions are what helps to build the child's cognitive development. Gone are the days when a person will have a newspaper reading and then the child have the book or the other something upside down reading. And because of those inactions, children nowadays are falling short when it comes down to cognitive reasoning, language, and speech because we don't challenge them. Their brains are like sponges. We are not pouring the water to help them to soak up the right amount of information. So that's it for me. Now, just in closing, what we need to do, I want you to listen, repeat, expand. I want you to help them to use stories, songs, and play. And I want you to be able to ask better questions for them, because that's how their overall language will develop. Now, at Edunomics, our early childhood program helps our students understand the practical aspects of teaching in the classroom. So, if you are interested in doing an early childhood certificate, you can always try Edunomics. So the link is in our bio. Have a wonderful afternoon.